you all for coming. I'm Kayla Toll with the Alzheimer's Association East Central Iowa's chapter. My office is in Iowa City. Currently, my location is within the Chamber of Commerce. We will potentially be moving here in a couple of months, so we'll probably make a big announcement for that. We also have our chapter office in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is in the Human Services Building downtown. And we have another chapter office in Cedar Falls, Iowa, which is on Orchard Drive, kind of by Veridian off of University, if you're familiar with that area. So we have 19 counties in the state of Iowa, and the rest of the counties are with Greater Iowa, which we do a lot of partnering with them. I was actually at their chapter office yesterday visiting with them about our walked-in Alzheimer's, so I'll give a little spiel about that later. So I just want to also say thank you for joining me. Today we're going to do the Know the 10 Signs Early Detection Matters program, and it is sponsored by the Alzheimer's Association. It is a national organization. The Early Detection Project is important because currently many people go undiagnosed for years, losing valuable time that could be spent planning for the future and managing symptoms. In 2008, the Alzheimer's Association received support to begin an early education campaign highlighting the importance of early detection. We were extremely grateful to Jay Smith, whose efforts spearheaded this campaign. Jay's wife, Patty, was diagnosed at age 51, 2 years after she first showed signs and symptoms of the disease. Today, you'll be given a really unique opportunity. You're going to hear from people with the disease and also their family members talking about their lives with Alzheimer's. It's a chance to see real people telling you the truth about their own journeys, from the first sign of a problem through diagnose and early adjustments. Some of it might sound very familiar to those of you with concerns, and some of it will be new for you, new information, ideas, and new ways of looking at things. And parts of it will amaze you when you see how these individuals have learned to adapt themselves, their families, their daily activities, and their views of themselves to come in terms with Alzheimer's. Our first video clip is showing Mary Ann, who is living with Alzheimer's disease, and she's going to talk a little bit about the stigma associated with the disease.
With a disease that takes your self, that's pretty scary stuff. And I think that the next wave of people with the help of the association is going to, the next wave of this disease is going to be to not be the only one who has it. That we're going to get comfortable enough, and if we who can speak enough, and people say, well, she's not shirking, she can put two words together. She's still living, she's still out there, he's still talking, she's still writing, and there are people doing all of this. Then I think the stigma, because that's a word we haven't said, will be lessened. I think it will be diminished. We don't blame people for having cancer. We don't turn the other way. We have historically done that with Alzheimer's disease. And I think that day is gone, and I think that we who live now and know about this are going to be part of the change.
So as Marianne said, there is a stigma around Alzheimer's and dementia. So today we're going to go through some of the myths versus realities and also educate ourselves on knowing the 10 signs for early detection. First, let's take a look at some differences between typical aging and Alzheimer's disease. One myth is that having a little touch of dementia is a typical part of aging, when the reality is our brains age right along with the rest of our bodies, and our abilities naturally change with age. But this aging process is different from the disease process that accompanies a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. For many years, we thought that aging included a list of changes, and we believed that having at least some of these changes were inevitable. We called it just simple memory loss, or oh, it's just my age. Now that we know they are actually symptoms of a number of diseases, including Alzheimer's disease. So let's talk a little bit about what is Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a disease of the brain that progressively destroys brain cells, causing problems with memory, thinking, and behavior. In the early stages of Alzheimer's, the affected person may experience memory impairment, lapses of judgment, and subtle changes in personality. As the disorder progresses, new areas of the brain are affected. Memory and language problems worsen, as do movement and perception. There may be some disorientation and personality changes. Dementia, on the other hand, is an umbrella term. It is a term used to describe a decline in cognitive functioning. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia, accounting for about 70% of dementia cases. Another myth is that if I have memory loss, that means I have Alzheimer's disease or dementia. The reality of this myth is that most people who have memory loss do not actually have Alzheimer's disease. And there are many other diagnoses that memory loss is a symptom of. The person who can determine the cause of this memory loss and these symptoms is a doctor. So as always, be sure to consult a physician to make a thorough diagnosis. There are also a number of risk factors for dementia, but most of them will not predict whether or not you will develop Alzheimer's disease or another related dementia. However, you can always benefit from knowing these risks, and once you know the risks, you will be able to make changes to your lifestyle that may positively affect your brain health. It is known that age is the greatest risk factor for Alzheimer's. The younger onset Alzheimer's disease is unusual, and it totals less than 10% of all cases. Younger onset is when you show symptoms around the ages of 40 and up to age 65. Because women live longer than men on average, women are at a greater risk for developing dementia in their lifetimes. There are some other issues that factor into this calculation of a risk for dementia. They primarily have to do with education and socioeconomic levels, such as people's ability to provide good medical care and proper diet and intellectual stimulation. Another myth is that if Alzheimer's disease runs in your family, genetic testing will tell you whether you will get Alzheimer's disease too. The reality of this myth is that if a close family member has Alzheimer's disease, there is an increased risk of others in that immediate family developing the disease also. There are many other important risk factors along with this genetic component to keep mind of. Other than those with the rare exception of younger onset Alzheimer's disease, there is currently no genetic test that will tell you for certain whether you'll get Alzheimer's. Scientists have discovered a gene which is linked to a greater risk of developing late onset Alzheimer's, which is age 65 and above. Having that gene increases the risk of developing Alzheimer's, but it does not tell you whether or not you will develop the disease. If you're considering genetic testing, make sure to consult your doctor and also a genetic counselor. 3 other genes, though, are linked to younger onset, which is that under 65. If someone has these gene mutations, he or she will definitely develop the disease at some point. These incidences of Alzheimer's are very rare and only make up less than 1% of cases. It is most often that you would know for sure that you had this gene. There's also a heart-to-brain connection with Alzheimer's and dementia. Your brain is nourished by one of your body's richest networks of blood vessels. The risk of developing Alzheimer's or vascular dementia appears to be increased by conditions that damage the heart or blood vessels. These include high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and high cholesterol. African American and Latinas are to be particularly at risk at this connection, but when these factors are brought under control with diet, exercise, and appropriate medications, no differences between ethnicities is shown in the rates of dementia. Everyone should talk to their doctors and make sure that they're keeping their heart healthy so their brain can also be healthy. Early detection comes before an Alzheimer's diagnosis. It is personal acknowledgement of possible symptoms of Alzheimer's coupled with the willingness to talk. We heard from Mary Ann about her willingness to talk and break through that stigma. So next we're going to go through some of our 10 warning signs. Our first warning sign is memory changes that disrupt daily life. With typical aging, a person sometimes forgets names or appointments, but is able to remember them later. One of the most common signs of Alzheimer's, especially in the early stages, is forgetting recently learned information. Others include forgetting important dates or events, asking for the same information over and over again, relying on memory aids like reminder notes, sticky notes, or electronic devices, or relying on family members for things the person used to handle on their own. I will put a little plug in here. I personally am a huge fan of sticky notes. It's when you are using your sticky notes to remember to brush your teeth in the morning or at night, or putting a sticky note to remember when to set your alarm clock. When you're having to rely on those to do simple tasks, that could definitely be a sign of Alzheimer's. Next, we're going to hear from Sue, and she's going to talk about developing a coping strategy for this warning sign.
Well, I have a strategy I'm supposed to use. I have a hard time remembering to do it. But I have an apron, and I have a tape recorder that I can stick in one pocket, and a pad and a pencil in the other. And if I would just really be good at using that, I'd be in better shape. But that's my strategy for trying to remember what I wanted to do or what people said to me and that kind of thing.
A couple key things from Sue's discussion is using those strategies can be a part of the challenge, but one thing that I admire about her is that she tries to keep a sense of humor through it all. You can hear her giggling about it, and that just immediately boosts your emotions and helps those also around you. The second 10 sign is challenges in planning or solving problems. With typical aging, people may make occasional errors when balancing a checkbook, but with Alzheimer's, some people may experience changes in their abilities. They may have trouble following a familiar recipe or keeping track of monthly bills. They may have difficulty concentrating and take much longer to do things than they normally have done very speedy in the past. The third sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks. Typical aging involves occasionally needing help to use the settings on a microwave or to record a TV show. People with Alzheimer's often find it hard to complete daily tasks like shopping, cooking, personal grooming, or medical care. Sometimes people may have trouble driving to a familiar location or managing a budget at work, or maybe even remembering rules to a favorite game. Had to plug in a little bit March Madness there. In our next film clip, Joyce, who lives with Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia, talks about being surprised by having this particular warning sign.
The biggest challenge is in reading and in doing simple tasks like just counting change. That's really hard for me. I can balance a checkbook. If someone gives me a series of coins, I have a hard time really figuring out how much change I should get. That's so, for somebody with a PhD, that's like crazy. And I think it's hard for me to come to grips with that.
And our fourth 10 sign is confusion with time or place. With typical aging, a person may sometimes get confused about the day of the week, but figure it out later. I think this is also just part of our human nature. I often forget, especially if my routine is messed up. If it's Monday or Tuesday, I woke up like that today. I don't really know why, but I figured it out after about 5 minutes. Whereas people with Alzheimer's can lose track of dates, seasons, and the passage of time. They may have trouble understanding something if it's not going to happen immediately, and sometimes they may forget where they are or how they got there. Our fifth sign is trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. Typical aging includes vision changes related to aging of the eyes, such as cataracts. But for some people, having vision problems is a sign of Alzheimer's. They may have difficulty reading, judging distance, and determining color and contrast. Perception and judging distances have very real implications for driving. The use of rearview mirrors, side mirrors while driving is very key to safety, but if someone with the disease is doing all of this at once and looking over their shoulder and all the stimulation, it could be way too much information. This may make them become upset or make mistakes, both of which can lead to accidents. And this is always a very difficult conversation to have. So I'll give some more information about a helpline through the Alzheimer's Association that can help you in having these conversations and going through the driving part of everything, because that is always a real worry for everyone, which is understandable. The number 6 sign is new problems with words in speaking or writing. Typical aging includes sometimes having trouble finding the right word. Once again, I think that's human nature. People with Alzheimer's may have trouble following or joining a conversation. They may stop in the middle of a conversation and have no idea how to continue or what they're going to say. They may struggle with vocabulary, have problems finding the right word, need to repeat themselves, and call things by their wrong name. One common one that we hear is calling a watch a hand clock, so breaking it down to more simple terms. And that's how they're able to process it. We're going to hear from Joyce again and talk about how she first noticed this particular warning sign.
My sister, who lives in North Carolina, I live in New York, I sent her an email. And apparently she showed it to my brother-in-law. And she called me and said, that email made no sense at all. And one of the things that I neglected to tell you was that I would do, write emails, things that normally took me about 2 minutes to do. It would take me a half an hour, 45 minutes. And I'd have to read it over, and there was no guarantee it was okay. So I had another person at work read over it. And so it was hard. It was hard. And that's when I realized I thought my emails were fine. Then my sister started telling me and everybody. So I said, it's not, things aren't coming out right.
One aspect of this sign that I will highlight is her talking about writing an email taking much longer than it did before. We often see this also with letter writing. The 7 sign is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. You will see that the key here is losing the ability to retrace your steps. So typical aging involves misplacing things from time to time, such as a pair of glasses or the remote control. I'm a queen at losing my keys. I lose them in my purse. I leave them in my door. I leave them in my car. I'm very bad at that. A person with Alzheimer's disease may put things in unusual places. They may lose things and not be able to go back and retrace their steps to find them. Sometimes they may accuse others of stealing, and this may occur more frequently over time. So once again, like I said, yes, I'm the queen at losing my keys, but I'm able to retrace my steps, think back, work backwards, and find them. Someone with Alzheimer's would not be able to do that cognitive process of retracing. The 8th sign is decreased or poor judgment. Typical aging involves making a bad decision once in a while. People with Alzheimer's may experience changes in judgment or decision making. For example, they may use poor judgment when dealing with money, giving large amounts to telemarketers. I believe we heard that that's going to be a speaker during the Caregiver series with Hills Bank. They may become less able to choose clothing that is appropriate to the weather or the season. The 9th sign is withdrawal from work or social activities. With typical aging, someone may periodically feel weary of work, family, and social obligations. A person with Alzheimer's may start to remove themselves from hobbies, social activities, work projects, or family gathering. They may have trouble keeping up with their favorite sports team or remembering how to engage in a favorite hobby. They may also avoid being social because it becomes harder and harder to follow conversations. That leads us to our 10th sign, changes in mood and personality. Typical aging can involve developing very specific ways of doing things and becoming irritable when a routine is disrupted. But when the mood and personalities of people with Alzheimer's can change with the disease, it is much easier for someone with dementia to do things in very routine ways with not much change or variety. They can become confused, suspicious, depressed, fearful, or anxious when situations call for spontaneous changes or quick responses. As a result, they may become easily upset at home, at work, or with friends, or in places where they feel like they are out of their comfort zone. So let's talk a little bit about what we should do if we see some of these 10 signs in ourselves or in a loved one. First and foremost, talk with them about it, or talk about it. Talk with people about what you're seeing and what you're thinking. Discuss your suspicions. Break the silence about the disease that makes people stay away from the medical care that they need. Comes back to that stigma. Encourage anyone with symptoms to see a doctor to find out the cause. Some causes of the signs can be treated or reversed. One story I just recently heard was a lady she was caretaking for her grandfather, and she put it as a medical fog. He seemed down, depressed, not willing to socially engage. He was just very to himself, and that is part of the 10 signs. She went and saw a doctor and found out that it was actually a medication making him feel this way. So there are other things that can cause that. We'll talk about that later. Getting the right treatment as soon as possible is crucial, no matter what the diagnosis. It's easy to let things slide, but you can change or even save a life by continuing to talk and follow up. Together we can break the stigma that keeps people from getting the help that they need. In our next clip, we're going to see Susan give some advice to families dealing with the changes that they see in their loved ones.
I would hope that families could be gentle but straightforward. I would hope that they wouldn't minimize the challenge of this or make it larger than it needs to be. So I guess I would say you have to be aware that changes are coming, but they're coming, inch by inch, and sometimes foot by foot. But most often, you just have to talk about it. Not to be afraid to talk about it, not to be worried about how to talk about it, but talk about it. Because if you don't, I think that there's going to be 1 or 2 days where you just find there are arresting moments and you have no idea where to put that or how to manage that. Not to be afraid, just to talk.
Like she said many times, don't be afraid to talk about it. After detecting warning signs, the next step is getting a thorough assessment from a doctor. The diagnosis may not be Alzheimer's at all, like we discussed. It may be from a completely different source. But no matter what the diagnosis turns out to be, early diagnosis is always critical. Another myth is that there is no point in getting a diagnosis because dementia is not curable or treatable. It will just upset my family and me, so why do it? And actually, we get this a lot. There are a number of very good reasons to pursue a diagnosis, so we're just going to take a look at them now. Once a person with symptoms sees the doctor, they often discover that they actually don't have dementia at all, but have another illness. Some of the illnesses that can cause memory problems are treatable and can be reversed, like depression or thyroid problems. Other illnesses that can cause memory problems can be life-threatening if not detected and treated promptly. We talked about that heart-to-brain connection, and heart problems and high blood pressure that can be caused by mini strokes are things that can lead to dementia-like symptoms. These need to be diagnosed and treated right away to avoid even more serious damages. It's important not to ignore changes or to assume that it is Alzheimer's. Another myth is you don't need a complete set of diagnostic tests to know if you have Alzheimer's disease. You can just try a medication for memory loss. If it works, you know. The reality of that is that there are many types of dementia and they are dealt with differently. A number of tests will be needed to be done in order to get the most accurate diagnosis. If you get a diagnosis without having all of these tests done, ask your doctor to refer you to a specialist who can complete them. Only with a complete and thorough diagnosis can you know what you're dealing with and how to treat it. So we're going to hear from Gary talking about the time it takes to get a diagnosis.
And he actually for 6 months called this my cognitive impairment. And I kept seeing him every 6 months, and he finally, maybe the second visit or the third visit, he said, I hate to tell you this, but you are early onset Alzheimer's. And I asked him why he didn't say that in the first meeting, and he said to me, a lot of doctors are too fast about assuming that's what it is without further testing, because you can have the symptoms and it can come from the drugs you're taking. And they can take you off those drugs and your mind will be fine. And there's other things that can happen to give you the symptoms of early set Alzheimer's, and it really isn't. It can be corrected. And he just wanted to be sure before he did anything.
So like he said, doctors do need to take their time in order to make a correct assessment and rule out other diseases before saying it is Alzheimer's. Experts estimate a skilled physician can diagnose Alzheimer's with more than 90% accuracy, but there is no single test that proves a person has Alzheimer's. The medical workup is designed to evaluate overall health and identify any conditions that could affect how well the mind works. The doctor will interview the person being examined or family members to gather information about current and past illnesses and will ask about specific symptoms. They will do a physical examination and testing of blood and urine to help identify other disorders with similar symptoms. The doctor will also do a mental status testing, which gives a general idea of whether a person is aware of having symptoms or feels nothing at all, knows the date, time, and where he or she is, can remember a short list of words, follow instructions, and do simple calculations such as counting backwards from 100 by threes. Which sounds hard, actually. I did it the other day, actually, and I was like, this is harder than I thought it would be. In addition to assessing mental status, the doctor will evaluate a person's sense of well-being to detect depression or other mood disorders that can cause memory problems, loss of interest in life, and other symptoms that can overlap with dementia. Their neurological exam is an important part of the physical. Its goal is to assess the function of the brain and nervous system to identify symptoms of brain disorders other than Alzheimer's. During the neurological exams, the physician may test reflexes, coordination and balance, muscle tone and strength, eye movement, and speech. Currently, a standard medical workup for Alzheimer's disease often includes a brain imaging with an MRI or less often a CT scan. These images are used primarily to rule out tumors, strokes, or damage from severe head trauma or a buildup of fluid. Research has also shown that shrinkage in specific regions may be an early sign of Alzheimer's. However, scientists have not yet agreed upon standardized values that would establish the significance of a specific amount of shrinkage for any person at a single point in time. It's kind of confusing. So pretty much the shrinkage isn't set in stone yet. In the future, there may be a role for these tests in directly diagnosing dementia as well. Information from these tests can help identify other disorders that may cause memory loss, confused thinking, trouble focusing attention, or other symptoms similar to dementia. In addition to these disorders listed on the slide, others include diabetes, kidney or liver disease, thyroid abnormalities, problems with the heart, lung, or blood vessels. Like I had mentioned briefly before, there are other forms of dementia. Vascular dementia, which is widely considered the second most common type of dementia, is typically developed when a stroke impairs blood flow to parts of the brain. Frontotemporal dementia has symptoms that include behaviors that are usually associated with mood rather than memory, apathy, withdrawal, and lack of motivation. Mixed dementia is when Alzheimer's is also with vascular dementia, and that occurs at the same time. Lewy body dementia has symptoms which include visual hallucinations, stiffness, shuffling, shakiness, and sleep disorders, including acting out dreams while awake. Not everyone who seeks a diagnosis will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. But for those who are, there are things that can be done to improve functioning and care. With early diagnosis, you can get the maximum benefit from available treatments. You can explore treatments that may provide some relief or symptoms and help you maintain some independence. You may also increase your chances of participating in clinical drug trials that offer high standards of care and also advanced research. I have trial match cards in the back, and I can explain those more, but all it is signing yourself up to be in a database that will link you up to any clinical research studies that are going on that you meet the demographic and the criteria for. There's more information online if you follow the link on the card also. In our next film, Justine, who is 75 and has been living with Alzheimer's disease for a year, talks about the importance of early diagnosis.
Early diagnosis is very important, because it's like with anything, if you start early, you'll have more success in the treatment of it. And with Alzheimer's, there is no cure, but it can be made livable. You know, the medication can help you live a more productive life with it.
So like she said, it's better to get started with medications early to get the most help from them. There are medications designed to help relieve some symptoms, but not to stop the disease progression. Some medications may temporarily improve memory or slow down memory loss. Other drugs are available to help with mood and behavior changes. It is very important to talk with your doctor about what treatment is best for you or your loved one. With early diagnosis, you can have more time to plan for the future. A diagnosis of Alzheimer's allows you to take part in decisions about care, living arrangements, transportation, and safety, financial, and legal matters. These plans are made much more easily before they are needed. You can also participate in building the right care team and social support network with a timely diagnosis. One of the best things we can all do for our families and ourselves is to get legal, financial, and care plans in place sooner rather than later. Everyone needs to find ways to make their money last. Reducing financial stress that can come from paying for care requires advanced planning. Seek legal advice and services from an attorney who is knowledgeable about legal issues for seniors. Elder law attorneys are specialists in that area and can help with making plans. However, many of the forms and instructions needed to complete these plans are available online and in office supply stores. Some of the planning issues include identifying and completing legal documents, making plans for medical and treatment decisions, making plans for finances and property, and naming another person to make decisions on your behalf when you no longer can. Doing this allows you to participate in making decisions and ensures your family won't be forced to make them for you in a crisis situation. To find an attorney who specializes in elder care, you can visit National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys website, or you can contact the Alzheimer's Association, and I have legal and financial brochures in the back also. Now let's take a look at some resources that can help your whole family. There are many chapters, like I said, there's 2 in the state of Iowa of Alzheimer's Association. Each chapter offers many services and programs, such as the one today, for people living with Alzheimer's disease and their families. I'd be glad to sign anyone up for our e-newsletter. All you need to do is sign your email on the sign-in sheet. You can also visit our website, alz.org/ECI, and then I also give you a 1-800 number at the end of the presentation. It's the one at the bottom if you can see it. It's on all of our printed material. It'll be on every brochure. Any material that you will get from the Alzheimer's Association will include our 1-800 number. The goal for people who have been diagnosed is to live meaningful, active lives for as long as they can. That's the goal for all of us. There are many resources now available to help people who have been diagnosed with dementia live with purpose for as long as possible. You can add your skills, motivation, and voice to the cause with fundraising and advocacy efforts to help those with dementia and their families. We have plenty of fundraising and advocacy opportunities, such as the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which will be held at Lower City Park on September 20th of 2015. It is a Sunday. And for instance, we actually have a group in Des Moines right now that are talking with legislatures and trying to get some advocacy. They're doing a Day at the Hill today, which is really cool, which is also in our newsletter if you're interested. So we're just going to do a quick recap of everything. If you notice any of the 10 warning signs in yourself or someone else, talk about it. Check it out with your doctor. It may be typical aging, or it may be something that you need to pursue. It's always important to know what you're dealing with. Get a thorough set of tests from your doctor to find out why the symptoms are occurring and what needs to be done to address it. Be sure to follow up on all the recommendations that your doctor gives you and build the team you need to address the issues you are facing. If it is a form of dementia, the Alzheimer's Association can help you and your family, so call us. Here's Mimi, who lives with Alzheimer's disease, to sum things up for all of us.
My passion in life is to have people diagnosed as early as I was, so that the good part of their life can be extended. I wear an Alzheimer's bracelet every day that says there's reason to hope, and I think that's kind of my mantra. That, if we can find people that are out there, get them to a good place where the guy knows, gal, whatever, knows what they're doing, and get diagnosed and get help.
So as Mimi reminds us, there is reason to hope. Great things are happening now in research and at a rapid pace. And the programs and services offered through the Alzheimer's Association are helping more people than ever who are affected by dementia. So lastly, I'm just going to leave these two things up here. This is our 1-800 number. It is 24/7, 365. It's staffed by professionals who are used to having these incoming calls. They're there to help, whether you just have a question, you're in a crisis situation and need to talk to someone. They'll be able to give you some referrals, information about things that are in Iowa City even, or if you have a loved one across the country. They're always there for you. And also our alz.org website is a fantastic resource. But I personally like to talk to people, so that 1-800 number is always going to be great. I think the last time I heard the wait minute was like under a minute. So there's always someone right there. So are there any questions? Yeah.
Excuse me, is it this number that we call for help with talking about driving?
Yes. Yep. They'll be able to answer questions, or even if there needs to be a referral, whether it needs to be a discussion with a doctor or a specialist, if that's what it comes to, they'll be able to help you with that conversation.
Instead of watching the signs, what about just avoiding it altogether?
My biggest advice to avoiding Alzheimer's altogether, unfortunately, there is no cure, prevention, or treatment of the actual disease. So I had mentioned it briefly in this slide. Anything that you can do to keep your whole body healthy is going to help you with any disease in the long run. Making sure you're staying socially engaged, keeping that stimulation, the cognitive stimulation, whether it be doing a crossword puzzle or making sure you're reading. We often suggest starting to pick up new hobbies, always trying to advance yourself, keeping yourself physically fit or physically well, eating healthy. It's kind of the same spiel all the time, I know, but it is the best thing that you can do, is to really keep your whole body, your mind, body, spirit well. Any other questions? Yeah.
I was wondering what kind of specialist you go to for this. Is this a neurology person? Or?
Yes, it definitely can be a neurology person. It's kind of where your family physician wants to put you from there. Unfortunately, I just heard someone speak last week, and it's amazing that if you have cancer, you go to an oncologist. If you have heart disease, you go to a cardiologist. Well, there's no Alzheimer's doctor. So whether it be a neurologist, psychiatrist, even just starting that conversation with your family physician, as long as you're starting that conversation and you're really pursuing an answer, that is going to, be a good outcome, in the long run.
Just may I add a little bit to her for an answer? Because I made an appointment for a cognitive evaluation 2 months at the University Hospital is when my appointment is. So it's not a short thing. And I had to be referred by my doctor to go there. So if you're, it's a short time, or it's not a short time.
Right. And one thing that we do offer currently, we won't be able to offer them right away, but we will be offering care consultations through our office. And these are if you're, in a situation that you need some more in-depth answers, and you want to speak with we have a program specialist who talks with physicians on a daily basis and things like that. The care consultation is there to answer those specific questions about you or your loved one. So that would be made by calling the 1-800 number too. So if you have more specific questions about which doctor to go to in this situation, or even if you are looking into care facilities and you don't know where to start, care consultations are a great way to do that. We're hiring for the position, so it's not set yet, but here shortly in a couple months, then the care consultations will be more readily available again. Yes.
How does dementia affect your reading?
Wanted to say it again just in case.
How does dementia affect your reading? I've never known that to be a sign.
That was more, I mean, a lot of the signs are on individual basis. So there's the typical age-related vision problems, but it can be also a cognitive disruption of not being able to visually process what is, what you're reading. So just it depends on what area of the brain it's affecting. Any other questions? One more?
In one of those interviews of the person the gentleman that was diagnosed after 3 visits, the doctor finally told him that that's what he thought. It was he was early stage of Alzheimer's. Is that normal?
It can be, yeah. So there is mild cognitive impairment, which is a disease, and it can and cannot lead to Alzheimer's. So that's what he was talking about, how he kept getting diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. And so that diagnosis is probably one of the reasons why they kept up with it so much, because it has a risk of leading to Alzheimer's disease. So yes, I mean, unfortunately, it is a very individual thing too. Not everyone's going to have the same story, and so that makes it very difficult on trying to find that cure and that treatment and that prevention, because it is so individualized. So yes, it can definitely be possible that it might take that long.
Then, in your opinion, or the Alzheimer's Association's opinion, is the medical profession up to date on Alzheimer's?
They're doing a lot of research advancements. Actually, recently, and I don't have the facts and figures up, but they will be released, I think next week, actually, for this past year, and it will have a ton of research advancements. We are making leaps and bounds, and research is our number one thing right now. And thus without research, we're never going to find a cure. We're never going to find treatment. We're never going to find prevention. We're making tons of leaps and bounds in research and funding of research to even be able to get there. So yes, I do believe it is up to date. I mean, there's a lot of things that we need to do, but without funding and without those scientists doing their jobs, they're not going to get there. So I think you'd be a really good person to know the facts and figures when they come out. So you should put your email down.
I'll give you credits later on for the film strip. With the science aspect again, finally we got a cure for hepatitis C, and it costs $1,200 for the pill. Now, if we find a cure for Alzheimer's, and the pill is going to be $5,000 for the pill, it's just, that's another deterrent on people saying that they care, as my gentleman friend in the back saying, all right, you've got it, put up with it, and go along with it. So you lose your car keys, have 2 sets of car keys.
And our goal is never to say put up with it. Our goal as the Alzheimer's Association is to make your quality of life as best as it can be for as long as it can be. I mean, my hope is that someday I can say everyone can survive from Alzheimer's disease. I mean, that can't be said. There is not a single survivor of Alzheimer's disease. And with, like, I'm going to go back to that research thing. Without having that research at first, the first research, I can't say it will or will not be. That first research project that pulls through and finds a cure, it may be $1 million. Who knows? Unfortunately, I wish I could pull out a crystal ball and know the answer to that. But, you know, I mean, I'm so passionate about the research, and I'm so passionate about that science aspect of it, that without people like you guys educating yourselves and knowing that there are options to be in a clinical trial, we're not going to get there, and we're not going to know the answer to, is that pill going to be $12,000? I hope not. But, you know, as like I said, as Alzheimer's Association, our main goal is to improve people's quality of life for as long as it can be. And I mean, and to find a cure for Alzheimer's and dementia. But until then, you know, we care about those with the disease and that are affected by the disease, and to bring awareness and to bring advocates.
Just in reply to particularly your statement, but also to the other gentleman back there, it's that I'm passionate about advocating for care for Alzheimer's because it affects my family. And it has been so very difficult with my father and his wife both. I don't want to downplay the difficulty for them, but it's been extremely difficult for their children, for their grandchildren. I have no idea about your life circumstances, but no one lives in a vacuum. If Alzheimer's, if any dementia advances, it gets to the point where that person cannot take care of themselves. It's just a fact. So this is a big societal tsunami going on right now, and it can be so very expensive for families, for individuals, for organizations. I think that that's just simply not an option to just let it go.
I mean, I'd be happy to share the facts and figures. It will be on all of our website and everything once that gets released. Unfortunately, I don't have the most updated one. I just have the 2014 facts and figures, the one that was released in 2014. But it is in the trillions what it's expecting to cost our healthcare, this disease. And so, I mean, without people who are going to advocate and bring awareness and try to support to find the cure, we aren't going to get anywhere. So join the walk. That's my main job, is the walk to end Alzheimer's. So if you want to hang out with me for a day, you should come. You're always welcome to stop by the office or give me a call too. I can put some of my business cards in the back.
Do we know yet whether there are more people getting it, or whether it's just that we're aware of more people with it?
That's actually a really good topic, and they discuss that a lot at Leadership Summit, and I'm not going to probably be able to say anything verbatim or give you the correct answer. I think it is a mix of both, with especially baby boomer generation and that generation aging. So, okay, I think I'll have time for just one more, but I'll stick around the back, so.
I just wanted to make a comment. We had a member of our extended family who several years ago was showing signs of confusion and some of the early onset signs. And I know one of the common things is to want to get a diagnosis, find out what's happening here. But they stepped back and took some time before they went to their doctor and had some conversations with off the record conversations with professionals, and then took the step of getting long-term care insurance, which they had not had before they actually went to see their doctor and had anything on the record. And it's a real safety net for them now. I mean, they've staved off the worst side of Alzheimer's for quite a while through very aggressive activities and medications. But I just thought that was a very interesting step, and for them, quite helpful to knowing that they now have that, that backup plan in place, rather than rushing and getting something on their medical records.
Yes, it is always good to plan ahead. I mean, I don't think that, you know, they can say you can plan as much as you can, and you never know what's going to happen, but it is good to have those conversations, even when you don't think that there's anything going on. I'm 23 and I've had those conversations with my loved ones. So it's always good to have them and to have that plan at least set in stone in case things were to be shaken. Well, thank you for coming. I'll be in the back if you have any more questions. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.